2.9. Call the police. The key to each plot, and each beat of every story, is that every action is properly motivated. If it isn't, you end up with stuff that feels fake, contrived, or convenient. One obvious example is when the characters on TV end up in some kind of illegal scrape or confronted with criminals, and you're screaming at the television, "Call the police!" Right now, your character would dial 999 and that would be that. But the writers have decided it would be funnier if they didn't call the police and tried to cover things up or deal with it themselves. If they can't call the police, you need a really good reason for it. Either there's some personal threat so they don't, although for me these reasons often ring hollow or seem generic, or the old flat mobile no signal trick which normally feels like cheating. Why is their phone not working? Is it because they said they didn't need to charge it up earlier and refused to admit they were wrong? Or maybe they're a stickler and in a long-running battle with their phone provider and have been cut off. You need a reason. If you don't fix this early on, you may end up facing it much later in the day when it's too late to find an elegant solution. In a rehearsal, any half-decent actor will ask the director, and then you, "Why is my character doing this?" This is the non-pretentious version of, "What's my motivation, love?" As the writer, you will need an answer, and the answer should not be because it's funny, or because you need to set up the story for later. That is a failure in writing. Try harder. Otherwise you've got a Kim Bauer character on your hands who spends every episode of 24 she was in running from danger to graver danger for no particularly good reason. Look at your storylines and ask yourself if they make logical sense. It's much easier to fix inconsistencies at this stage. If you're honest about it, in your heart of hearts, you know that Jennifer would never run down the street in a giraffe costume, even though it would be really funny. Or you know in the emergency she's the type to call the police. You might be able to address this quickly and easily. How? Let's address the latter. Maybe you really need that first call to go to the sister, not the police, in which case maybe she picks up the phone frantically and speed dials her sister, whom she tells to get off the phone because she needs to call the police, and you're into a conversation to the sister that you needed. Maybe the sister calls her at exactly the wrong moment, and she's been calling her throughout the episode at equally inconvenient moments, and this is the topper. You might well be able to keep the order of events as they are. It could be that a producer or script editor gives you a note that feels very unhelpful. Maybe they're trying to justify their salary by chipping in and say something idiotic like, "I would never do that." The answer to this note is, no, of course you wouldn't, but you're not Jennifer and you're not a character in this story. Of course you'd never say this. Does this person even understand who Jennifer is? Possibly not. But before you get too drunk on your own genius, writer, whose fault is it that the reader doesn't understand who Jennifer is? Have you written Jennifer as this character, or is that only in your head and not on the page? The answer to this note might be, yes, Jennifer wouldn't normally. That's why it's an interesting story. Events have taken such a terrible turn, she's made such a series of bad decisions that she has no choice but to do this thing. But is that true? It may be that you left the door open to other options, which she could plausibly do, in which case you need to close those doors. So the note is valid, and you have failed as a writer. That happens. Closing doors. Closing doors might not need a huge overhaul. It's a question of giving your protagonist no choice so that apparently illogical step for your character is the only realistic or plausible option. Have someone steal their mobile phone. Or the person who knows how to solve the problem is out of town or angry with the protagonist. You get this a lot in Curb Your Enthusiasm, in which Larry enrages a waiter, say by being excessively pedantic about something, and then later when he needs the help of said waiter, assistance is not forthcoming. Another option is to have the protagonist make mistakes in haste in a way that is understandable but irreversible. Or another character teases the character for being so predictable and an argument ensues so that your character does what you need them to do, doing the illogical thing. That's motivated by a desire to prove another character wrong, or impress someone hot. Strike a light. One other way of dealing with an illogicality is to amplify, feature it, and own it. This is called hanging a lantern on it. Rather than hiding the illogicality in a darkened corner, you light it up so it looks intentional. What does this even look like in the script? It may lead to some raised eyebrows at the unusual turn of events, a comment or a brief exchange. If you're going to do this, have it happen as early in your sitcom as possible. Otherwise it really smacks of convenience, and the audience will feel cheated. Ideally, do it with a joke, or a callback to an earlier joke. After all, it is a sitcom.